Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do a review of Catan. The board game? I think not. The expansion? I think not. The other 77,000 expansions? I think not either. This is Catan, the novel. It is done by Klaus Tuber, who also is the designer of Catan. And so we're going to take a look inside and see how this plays. Let's do that now. All right, let's open the product and take a look at what's inside. You have a set of instructions to teach you how to read the product. Looks like there's some entry. Looks like some, oh, look at the artwork. This is good. Fold-out map. Looks like the rule book looks daunting here, but don't worry, most of it is backstory. And as you'll read it, you'll notice that you have the front cover. That's always good to have with a book. And then you have the contents, and of course you have the back page at the back, which fits nicely into the rest of the book. Okay, that's it for the component. Now let's take an example of reading. Okay, so you'll notice first off that the rules of reading are very, very simple. In fact, it's kind of a throwback to older games. There's a lot of text here, so be warned. But yeah, you'll find that unlike the new, more modern approach of branching storylines and narrative pieces and dice and all that, this is actually a pretty sequential product. You'll start on the very first page here, and then you'll continue to go through all the way until you get to the end. Now, you'll work as a team or singularly to complete this game, and when you do, you'll be given a nice thanks of gratitude from the designer himself. Excellent. Always good to have designer notes and all these things. And that's really it. There's not much more to it. Playtime is anywhere from 5 to 10 hours based on how quickly you can learn, adapt, and enjoy the reading part of this product. So that's it. Let's get into my final thoughts on Catan, the novel. All right, so what do we think? What are my final thoughts on this? As always, we go over the cons first, then the pros, then our final thoughts. The cons are, gotta be honest, this is a throwback to a different kind of style. If you're used to branching storylines and a lot of elaborate tools to be able to create a story, this is really, it starts at the beginning and then it goes to the end of the book. That might not be great for every people. The other thing is it's probably a one to several player games, but this is more of a solo kind of game really in the end. I would, maybe you could get a bunch of people to get together and each sound out a word at a time and just go back and forth, but I wouldn't do it. I just make this a solo thing. As for the pros, well, it is a lengthy book. And so this isn't just something you can sit down and play and feel good about. It is something that will take you probably a few gaming sessions in the evening to play. It also has an elaborate a backstory, and that's good to have whenever you're about to embark on something. It's nice to have the setting set for you. As for replayability, to be honest with you, there's only really one way to play through, and then when you're done, you're done. So, take it for what it's worth. And now let's get serious. What do I think about Catan the novel? I bought this because it intrigued me that the actual designer of the board game also made this and he wrote this. And in reading it, the backstory and the notes for it, it's clear this was a kind of a passion for him. He envisioned this. This really is the backstory of Catan, the board game, as far as he envisioned how it was going to play out in time. And to that end, in general, I've bought books before based on board games. I bought the Terraforming Mars books and started reading those. And while they were technically accurate, the pacing was slow and it didn't grab me, so I didn't finish it. There's other books that get made mostly, but this was intriguing because Catan is such a pillar of board gaming and the explosion that it's had. The story itself is not unfamiliar to anyone who's ever watched the Vikings series. Seasons 1 through 6. There's a lot of similarity in that. You're going to find this to be a condensed mirroring of that time and context. It's more of a lengthy short story of the Vikings' 6 seasons all wrapped up in a more focused and singular goal, which is getting to Catan. That said, calling it a more abbreviated retelling of Vikings doesn't diminish the entertaining quality of the story. However, the characters develop and are introduced in plausible ways. I like the characters. I think characters make a story. If you can get into the characters, you can actually get into a story. And while there are some times when I think some shortcuts are made to resolve a few things in there, a lot of them are not. There's a lot of things that are mature reading or writing skills are making a play here. This is not just a cash grab by any regard. It was meant to be a serious homage to Catan the board game by the very maker of the board game himself. There's neither like a Disney ending-like quality of the book, nor is there a penchant to try to one-up the stark surprises, pun intended, of like a Game of Thrones style darker novel. It fits in between, and both the in sort of the lighthearted, this is Catan the game, and the dark, this is the Vikings world, and it was a pretty hostile place, are represented well. Much of the story carries along at a decent, even hurried pace, but without sacrificing insight into the events and the central characters as they weave through the many side roads along the way to the promised land. Or is it? One of the things is this is meant to be a trilogy, so having read book one, I did try to contact the publisher to get an idea, now that Klaus Tuber is no longer with us, whether there was a continuation, whether there was something to say this trilogy was actually not going to end at book one. It's a fulfilling story, but it definitely doesn't end without an understanding that there are meant to be other books as well to tie up some sadnesses. I enjoyed very much this story, and it's a tightrope walk between historically rooted fiction in summary form versus a grand drama opera of sorts. Catan the board game started a board game industry that's now in a billion-dollar renaissance. Catan the novel is a fitting capstone or start to a trilogy that would be hopefully a fitting capstone on the career of its now deceased designer. So for those of you, something a little break from board gaming for real, I would give it a shot. I think it was entertaining enough and kept my attention better than a lot of other books that are written as fiction based on board games. So there you go. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.